Hey friends, today we're sewing a jeans jacket. And in this video you will be able to see every single step, so you can easily sew along. You will also find the sewing pattern for the jacket in the sizes XXS to 2XL on my website, and for everyone who is watching this video there's a 25% discount with the code JEANSJACKET. You can also get the raw heavy denim fabric that I'm using in this video on my website. Together, the sewing pattern and the fabric are also available as a DIY kit. And the product description lists all the countries we're shipping to. So if you would like to support my work, feel free to step by. And if you don't want to miss the next sewing videos, feel free to subscribe to my channel, and if you like the jacket, I'm very happy about every thumbs up. In this tutorial I'll be using my normal sewing machine, the Singer HD 6335M, but also my overlock from Yuki, the MO50EN. If you only have a regular sewing machine, that's no problem at all. I'll be explaining everything within this framework, and all the parts that I'm sewing with the overlock are just a nice extra. But what do we actually need to sew the jeans jacket? Approximately 2 to 2.5 meters of denim fabric, depending on the size and width of the fabric of course, a suitable jacket pattern, ideally sewing needles that are suitable for denim, i.e. universal or jeans, thread with a color of your choice, normal, edge stitching and a buttonhole presser foot, an iron, scissors, a seam ripper, a measuring tape, tailor's chalk or a colored pencil, a hammer and 11 buttons. To start with, I have included all the pieces you need to sew the jacket. The instructions on how many pieces you need are also printed on the pattern pieces, but I think it's better to see everything visually. In addition, there are markings on all pattern pieces for the button or pocket positions. There are also small lines on the edges, which can be helpful for aligning two pieces when sewing them together. I would strongly recommend making these markings in advance on all pieces where they are needed. For the pieces with the red dot, the markings are made on the right side of the fabric, i.e. the side of the fabric that will later be visible on the outside. The blue dots indicate that the markings are to be made on the left side of the fabric. Some pattern pieces have fold line written on the edge, for example, which means that you should place this edge on the fold line of the fabric. So you fold the fabric and place the pattern piece on the closed edge. In general, I would recommend cutting almost all the pieces for this jacket on fabric folded in the middle. This will save you a lot of time. You can see how to align the pattern pieces on the fabric with the grain of the fabric by looking at the arrow on a pattern piece. Alright, so we will start with the back of the jacket, and for that we got those three pieces for the back, and now we will attach the left and right side, right sides facing like this onto our big panel. And for everyone who's rather or a beginner and sees this video, this is the right fabric side and this is the left. So this right fabric side will be later of course visible on the outside, and this will always be on the inside. So yeah, this is the term of saying right sides facing. We will align this edge to edge, and we will use clips to fix both sides in place. So now it should look like this. And now we will sew on, of course, both sides with a stitch length of 3 and the needle position in the middle. So we're sewing with a seam allowance of 1 centimeter. Don't forget to lock your seams. So this means that you make 2 or 3 stitches back, and then you start your right seam. This is so that the seam can't tear apart. And we are sewing edge to edge with the presser foot on the both fabric edges. And for a professional look, I will now overlock the seam allowances. You don't have to do that if you don't have a serger or an overlock machine. Yeah, but you can also look in your instruction manual of your regular sewing machine, like what kind of overlock stitches your machine has. And I also got a video where I show like the 5 best ways on how to overlock seam allowances with a regular sewing machine. So you can check out this video. And now we will iron our edges. So we flip our right and left back panel, and then we always fold over the seam allowance to the outside of the back panel, like this. And then we iron this all the way from the bottom to the top. And now we will take our edge stitch presser foot and set the stitch length to 4. And now with the help of this little metal element, we can simply glide on the edge of our ironed surface. And we will do a double top stitch seam also for a professional look. And now we will attach our upper back part also like this, right sides facing. So it should look like this. And now we will sew this on again with a stitch length of 3, the needle position in the middle, and we are sewing edge to edge. So now we want to iron this passage completely, just like before, but now we will fold the inner seam allowance to the top. And a little useful trick, if you're working with really thick fabric, just like me with this very thick denim, this is like a crossing of many fabric layers, and you can just simply use a hammer to soften this kind of spot. So I would strongly recommend doing this. And now we will do a double top stitch seam again. And we will continue with the sleeve. What's really important, I will show now for one sleeve, what you gotta do for both sleeves. Yeah, so it's exactly the same method, just we have one right and one left sleeve, but it's always the same. So we're gonna start by laying this side, right side's facing on top of the other one. And then we will fix everything with clips again, because now we will sew, or in any moment we will sew this section together, not this one. So now we will sew this section from top to bottom. And now, really important, we will sew exactly until here. Make sure to lock the seam pretty good. And I will also overlock this seam. And at the bottom of the sleeve, we will just fold this over like this. So it perfectly aligns with this edge. And we will do this on both sides. So it should look like this. And now with the needle position on the left, we will do a seam, so to speak, from the left side, and we'll do it perfectly on the edge. Just test it out where the needle gets in. This looks good. And now we will iron our seam again, and we will fold the inner seam allowance to the shorter side of the sleeve. And now we will do another double top stitch seam, and we will try to make a clean transition to our short bottom seams. And then we will overlock both sides. So it should look like this. So now we need to iron our seams from the right side, and for that we have to fold the inner seam allowances here to the right and to the left side, so it looks like this. Make sure this is also at the bottom. And now we will do for both sides each a double top stitch seam. So it should look like this. And in the next step, we will grab ourselves this piece where we have drawn this rectangle on the left side of the fabric, because we're going to place this here on the top. So this rectangle perfectly fits into that space. And then we can use some clips to fix the position. Also a needle. Because we will sew this rectangle so put the stitch length to 3, needle position in the middle, and then follow the drawn line. Pay attention that you directly hit the edge at the corner. So if you're with the needle directly over the corner, you can also simply just put the stitch length to 0. Then do the stitch, and then stitch length back to 3. Press of it up. And now we take our pair of scissors and make 2 diagonal cuts to the corner. Pay attention that you cut as close to the edge as possible, but don't cut into it. You can remove the needle as well. Then we can flip everything to the inside. So like this, and now Here we got a lot of fabric. We don't need all that. So we will cut some off. Now we will turn everything to the inside and align the fabric layers on top of each other. And now we will do a double top stitch seam for this passage. Now with the normal presser foot. So start with the needle position on the right. And as here are many fabric layers, I would recommend using the hand wheel. I'll switch the needle position to the left. And now we will grab our pocket piece and place this behind. So it aligns with this edge. So this is the look we want to achieve. We gotta turn it. And now make sure that the tip of the pocket is in the middle. And we use some pins to fix the pocket in place. And now take a pen or your scissors, and now we will press like 1/2 centimeter from the edges of the pocket, for example at the tip, pretty heavy into the fabric, just like this. Do this also at this corner. So we're setting some markers. And then we turn our front piece and mark our dots. And then I will draw lines And now we will sew on this line with the stitch length of 4 and the needle position in the middle. And now simply put the needle position to the left. And then we'll do the second top stitch seam. So now we grab our pocket flaps and put this one right sides facing on top of each other and fix this with clips. So it should look like this. And we will sew this shut, edge to edge, stitch length 3, needle position in the middle. Try to hit the tip perfectly. And now we gotta do some cuts so fabric is not collecting in the corners when we will turn this in any moment. Like this. And now we will cut off the thread ends. And now we will turn this. And we gotta push all the edges out. And the corners. For that, you can grab a pin or anything else. And then we will iron that. So now let's make a double top stitch seam all the way around. Okay, so now we take our pocket flap, put it synchronized just like that on top of that. And now we'll take our upper front part and put this on top, right sides facing, just like that. Then we're gonna attach all this with clips. So it should look like this. And now, very important, as you can see, here are many fabric layers. So as I'm working with really thick fabric, I definitely need to hammer very heavy onto that so it softens a bit. If you're working with thinner fabric, this won't be a problem, but I definitely need to soften that. Otherwise, I will definitely break my needle. So now we will sew this on with the classic stitch, needle position in the middle, stitch length 3. And we're sewing edge to edge. I will definitely support my presser foot. And now we gotta iron our seam once again, and this seam allowance is folded upwards. So now we will make another double top stitch seam. So in the next step, we want to sew the front pocket. And for that, we got our first pocket piece here. And to mention that there's a pocket method, which includes this piece, which would be folded like this. But as this fabric is pretty thick, and I decided that I will go with a pocket variant that does not include this strip. I will show you a very easy method. This one is a bit more complex, and I will show this one in a separate video. So we will do a pocket that will look like this in the end. And for that, we of course prepared on the left side of the pocket bag this rectangle. Always make 1 centimeter from this edge and 1 centimeter from this outer edge another line, and from there we have diagonal lines because we will cut there small triangles out, because we will flip this piece in any moment to the inside after we've sewn this on. what's really important that you consider the direction of the pocket positioning. You have to position it like this, so the bigger part goes to the inside of the jacket. So here will be the buttons or button openings. So always place the bigger part of the pocket to this direction. Don't do it like that, because then the pocket would be, or the direction of the pocket of the final jacket would be to the back, and we want to put our hand into that in this direction. So we got our markings that we did on the outside, so on the right side of the front of the pocket, and then we have our rectangle drawn on to the left side of the first pocket bag, and then we will simply align this just like that. We will also consider that this edge is touching the bottom, or the two edges, or some parts of the edges of the pocket bag will touch, or will connect to the bottom line of the front part of the jacket, so we can fix the pocket a bit down here later on. But this looks quite good. So we will take some needles to fix all this. And in the next step, we will sew the outer rectangle. So just follow your outer line. And now grab your pair of scissors. We will fold this like this. And then we're gonna make a cut directly in the middle. Just like this. And then we will simply cut until the 1 centimeter mark in both directions. And then we make those diagonal cuts as close to the corner as possible. Don't cut into it. And now we can turn this to the inside. And to test if you did everything right, you should see this triangle here, and also the same on the other side. Now position all fabric layers perfectly on top of each other. And then iron that. And now we will do 1 top stitch seam all the way around, edge to edge, needle position on the left. So now looking from the back side, simply take your other pocket piece and put this right sides facing on top of the first one. Simply fix the corners with clips. And now we will flip this, so we sew it like this. Needle position in the middle. And then we sew it shut. When we get to the rather narrow passage, I would recommend switching the needle position to the left, and then we can simply continue. Switch back to the middle. Alright, so I will overlock the edges of the pocket as well. So it looks like this, and now we're gonna take two clips and fix the pocket at the bottom edge. And now we will do two short stitches very close to the edge to fix the pocket. So put the needle in the right position. And now we got this strip, and we will attach this right sides facing like this. So it should look like this. And now we will sew this on, the needle position in the middle, stitch length 3. And now we will turn this to the inside. Arrange the fabric layers on top of each other, all the way from top to bottom. So it should look like this. And now we will fold in 1 centimeter. Also from the bottom to the top, and fix this strip with needles. So it should look like this. At the top we will make a marking, like roughly here. Alright, so now I would strongly recommend that we once again press with our pen very heavy into the fabric, not directly at the edge, but close to it, because we want to do a top stitch seam from the right side. So we got our dots. And we can connect those. And now, really important, this marking. We also do this here, because we will only sew from here or until here. This won't be sewn. This will be sewn all the way from the top to the bottom, or the other way around. But this is really important that you don't sew this shorter passage together. So first we grab our edge stitch foot and make one top stitch seam. And we'll sew just until the marking. And now we grab our normal presser foot, stitch length 4 stays, needle position in the middle, or any needle position you prefer. I think now for me the left one is better. Pay attention that you don't sew on the pocket bag, and then just follow the red line. Until the marking. So now we lay our back panel in front of us and simply lay our front parts, the right sides facing, on top of that. And we fix the shoulder seams with clips. So it should look like this. So now we'll sew these shut. Stitch length 3, needle position in the middle, sewing edge to edge. And also those edges will be cleaned up with the overlock. So now we're gonna iron those edges and we'll fold the inner seam allowance in the direction of the back panel. And now we will do for both shoulder seams our double top stitch seams. So it should look like this. Alright, so now we want to attach our sleeves, and we're just gonna start with the right sleeve. You can just simply copy how I laid it all in front of me, and then we will attach it edge to edge and the armhole rounding with clips. So it should look like this. And now we're going to do the same for the other side. And now we will sew our sleeves on. And now we will also overlock those seams. And now lay your back panel with the right side upwards in front of you, and then we will simply flip all this over on both sides. So now we're gonna fix those outer edges, this one and this one. Make sure that you match those seams. And I would recommend folding the seam allowances downwards. So now let's sew this shut. And now let's overlock those seams. So now we will continue with the strips for the sleeve bottom finish, where we will attach a button and 2 buttonholes later on. And we will also prepare our waistband, because we will all do this in the same manner. For that, as you can already see, we simply lay those right sides facing and attach everything with clips. Like this, because we will sew in a U shape, so this edge will be left open. And now I'm going to do the same for our waistband. This is pretty long, so well, let's see here. So it should look like this. And now let's pay close attention, because there's a little trick for nice corners. When you're an estimated 1 centimeter before this corner edge, you simply lift the presser foot by 45 degrees or turn it by 45 degrees. Then you do 2 stitches with a smaller stitch length of 2. Then you do your normal stitch length again, lift the presser foot, put it down, and then you sew the longer passage just like normal, and you do the same on the other side. Then we take our scissors and make those diagonal cuts. And then return the whole thing. And push the corners out. And we align both fabric layers onto each other. And we'll do the same for the other strip and also for the waistbands. And now let's iron everything. And now we will do a top stitch seam, always on the long edge of the piece. So don't do a top stitch seam. Okay, so now we gotta pay very close attention as we are gonna start attaching the waistband at the bottom of the jacket. And for that, you see this seam, and this should perfectly align with this edge, so you can simply lay the waistband on top of it. And now on the inside, I would recommend folding the seam allowances to both sides, and then take a clip and attach it like this. So now if you would fold it, this is perfectly aligned. And then we are simply attaching the waistband at the bottom edge all the way around. And you do this, of course, also on the other side. And now for the strips for the sleeve openings, We will do exactly the same. So align it like this. Then split the inner seam allowance. And then attach it all the way around. So it should look like this. And at the bottom it should look like this. And now let's sew this on. All right, to sew this on, we need a little bit of flexible fabric management. Because we will sew, of course, on the inside. So bring your presser foot to the inside. And now we start a little bit up front. And now we gotta stitch backwards. If you have thinner fabric, this is way easier. This is quite challenging. Because we gotta fold this. And you want to sew directly until the seam allowances we fold it to both sides. And if you reach that point, you can simply start your correct seam. But the start is always a bit challenging. Alright, so now we grab our waistband and we just have to do this, and this automatically folds in by itself, so we can simply see this. by that. Fold it around the corner. And now this approximately folded in 1 centimeter will be placed exactly on the seam that we sewed a minute ago, like this. And a little pro tip, if you're working with denim, pull this to the maximum, and then I would strongly recommend that you iron this edge in that direction, so it will be way easier to like do this. So it should look like this. I would definitely recommend that you hammer at this point on both ends, as there are many fabric layers on very small space. Yeah, so fix this all the way around, and now we will do a top stitch. So we will put the needle position to the left, stitch length 4 of course, then we'll sew very narrow to the edge. Let's put something under the presser foot to keep the same height. Alright, so now we will sew on the bottom strips for the sleeve opening, exactly in the same manner as the waistband. For that, once again, we will insert the presser foot a little bit up front. This. And now we will do our top stitch seam. Ja. So now we can turn our jackets inside out. Alright, so we lay our collar pieces in front of us like this so that the wider corners show like this to both sides. And now we lay those right sides facing on top of each other, and then we will fix this with clips. So it should look like this. Now we sew this shut. Keep in mind what you learned before about nice corners. So now we will turn this inside out. And now, of course, iron all that. And now we will make another top stitch seam just at the top edge. Alright, and now we slowly but surely come to the part of the project which decides if this is gonna be a success. Yeah, because there will be one point that decides if this jacket will turn out great. For that, we first need to fold this over. This is the reason why we didn't sew this all to the top. As you can see, I already did that on the other side. Now with the needle position in the middle, we sew this shut. Of course, we're sewing edge to edge. this on both sides. And now once again, for a beautiful corner, we will make a diagonal cut. Like this on both sides. Then we can turn this inside out. So this is it. And now the most critical part of this project. You see, as we sewed this together, this fabric edge is folding inwards by itself. So now, or in any moment, we will make a cut, and this cut is vital for the success of this jacket. For that, we need to align those fabric edges perfectly on top of each other. I'd recommend fixing that with a clip. And now we need to make the cut. I would strongly recommend rather cut too short than too long. So we'll get really close. We will cut maybe 1 millimeter before this corner. Like this. This is the cut. So we will be able to flip this up again, because there we will attach the collar any moment. This procedure we will do, of course, on both sides. So we still need to make this here. And now we will attach the collar exactly like the waistband and also the bottom strips for the arm sleeves in the same manner. So we make sure that here everything lies perfectly onto each other, so we can later flip this around very easily. Alright, so we attached our collar and now let's sew this on. Alright, so we will sew this on exactly in the same manner as the waistband and the bottom sleeve strips. So let's start this gonna be the most difficult part. So now we can simply fold this around. Exactly like before. So around the edge, and then fold this in. And then we will fix this all the way around with pins. So now we will simply do a top stitch seam very close to the edge as we folded everything inwards. So of course you can choose any button type you like. I now chose a new version I got. Otherwise you can also get the version where you have to hammer the button onto a metal pin, or you take one to sew on. And then it's quite easy. Just put it always in the middle of your markings. And let's have a look on how we stitch our buttonholes. So for the buttonholes, I would also always recommend starting here close to this edge and do the buttonhole in this direction. And of course you can look in your instruction manual what are the settings for your buttonhole stitch function, and then by that you can do your buttonholes. And now to open our buttonhole, we'll simply use our seam ripper. Start at one end, then so we cut from one side and then from the other side to the middle again. Like this. If you enjoyed the video, then I'm definitely happy about every thumbs up. Feel free to let me know in the comments how you liked the video, and if you got any more questions, please let me know. See you in the next video. Until then, have fun sewing!